Today, I want to introduce you to the controversial and, in my opinion, scary world of limb, specifically leg lengthening surgeries. For many people, their height is a huge factor in their confidence, as in many cultures, it can be one determinant of attractiveness. As we look into some of the cases of leg lengthening surgeries, you will see that it is mainly men undergoing this surgery, as it tends to be short men who are concerned by their height more than anyone else. Leg lengthening surgery didn't come about due to cosmetic concerns, as I'm sure you can imagine. It first came to be for the purpose of correcting bone growth abnormalities, often due to birth defects, injuries, or disease, hence rendering the person asymmetrical. But as with many surgeries, it eventually developed into a cosmetic by choice surgery. The surgery was initially invented by a Soviet doctor who invented the surgery for injured Soviet soldiers returning from war. The surgery was then hidden from the rest of the world for some time, however, due to the insular nation of the then Soviet Union. But this idea of the surgery becoming a cosmetic one is still shrouded in controversy due to its incredibly long and risky healing process, along with the high consequences if anything should go wrong. This surgery is interesting to mention as we see it is usually women undergoing cosmetic surgery to enhance their looks, often because of societal pressures they feel. But here we have a cosmetic surgery where it's more often undergone by men due to societal pressures they feel heavily about the beauty in being a tall man. And nowhere is this more prevalent than in countries such as and surrounding India, where on average men reach just under 5'5" in height. But even this, in these on average short countries, it appears that height in men is still viewed favorably as a beauty standard for men. But just to be clear, this isn't at all exclusive to India, with a huge increase in patients undergoing this elective surgery in countries like the US and Spain. With the huge increase in demand for the surgery almost always being cited as, I believe my height is ruining my life. I think all over the world, height is a factor that people consider when deciding on who they are attracted to, but also respect in the workplace. In many countries, we like to pretend we don't discriminate like this, but it is pretty safe to say it is there, even if subconsciously. However, in India, this fact isn't hidden at all. Height is openly discussed as imperative for matchmaking and respect in society in the workplace. And this, of course, leaves terrible consequences for men in India, where no matter how much they do in their life or how successful they are, their height holds them back, leading them to desperate options. Now, the reason this surgery is controversial, however, is because of the incredibly invasive and honestly scary scenes we see from inside this surgery, with some surgeons even stating that they think this is the most risky cosmetic procedure there is. So let's get into how the surgery works. The surgery begins by the surgeon drilling a hole in the leg bones, which are then broken in two. So the surgery starts by willingly breaking your legs, which is generally considered an extremely serious injury when it happens in an accident, requiring months of rehab afterwards. Following this, a lengthening device, usually a metal rod, is inserted and attached to the bone. The device is there to slowly pull apart the two ends of the bones which have been broken in two, with the idea that the new bone will grow where this gap has been developed, thanks to the inserted metal rod. The idea is that a new bone will grow in this void and eventually solidify to become a normal bone. So, following the surgery, you will wake up with legs, held together by screws, rods, and an external metal brace because obviously it's going to take months, maybe more, for this new bone to solidify so you can walk on it at an increased height. So, as you can imagine, the risks of this surgery not going as planned or the bone not growing as imagined is hugely consequential to the patient's life going forward, including severe pain, infections, and complications with or the inability to walk again. And since the metal rod is internal, it makes it a lot harder to monitor and know if anything has happened inside your leg. The leg lengthening range is anywhere between 7 to 4 centimeters, with the healing process, of course, being harder for the longer the length desired. One of the main concerns is also if one's leg's new bones grow at a different rate to the other, causing the patient to become asymmetrical and therefore disfiguring them, ironically, creating the exact condition this surgery was designed to correct. While there have been many successful cases from this surgery, there have also been many traumatic, unsuccessful cases where the patient's life has been irrevocably altered, and the surgery cannot be reversed. There are some stories out there regarding these surgeries going wrong and also patients suing surgeons for wrongdoing. But the issue is with being short seen as a stigma for these people, they also have shame in people knowing that they underwent this surgery. So many people keep quiet about the horrors that have gone wrong under this surgery. There is one case of someone who spoke up in rural India where a young boy from a poor family told media they were tricked into believing the surgery wasn't invasive and the lengthening instrument would be an external device. This boy began having huge complications from infections to the bones not unionizing. After four surgeries that failed, the boy's family stopped trusting this doctor and sought another one. This new doctor would tell them they had essentially been played because this surgery would never work for this boy, as his problem was that there was a bone in his hip that wasn't growing, and that the only solution for this to be corrected was to fix the hip bone, and then the boy should grow naturally, which is exactly what happened. Now let's talk about the recovery process of the surgery. The first thing to consider is that those who undergo the surgery will have to stay in bed for anywhere from a few weeks to several months as they are unable to walk with their broken legs. And this is if there are no complications. Patients are given exercises to do at home to slowly grow the bones 1 millimeter at a time. For instance, Peloton cycling, where you sit and pedal with your legs. To make things worse, many of the cases where patients have spoke out about negligence by the surgeon tries to blame the patient for not following their recovery plan. Especially in India, there are many cases that are barely breaking mainstream news of undertrained doctors performing these surgeries, leaving people paralyzed or with life-threatening infections. It is believed many of these backyard surgeons use these patients as experiments, like with the young boy from rural India I mentioned before. While 90% of the cases we hear coming out of India are of men, there are also some women undergoing this surgery due to their height insecurities. One such case is the one of Elaine Fu, a Malaysian woman who followed a career as a wildly successful banker in wealth management. She found herself traveling the world, getting high positions in a range of different banks, till most recently she found herself extremely high up in a bank in London. But after years of facing ridicule about her height from people within her own workplace, she looked into getting the surgery. She thought that going to one of the top surgeons in London, charging at the higher range for these surgeries, she would be fine. She spent about £50,000 on this surgery by an extremely well regarded surgeon. His name was, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce this, but I think it's like Dr. Guichet, who performs surgeries in both London and Milan. After 2 weeks of healing, Elaine knew something was terribly wrong. She heard an unforgettable crunch, followed by severe pain. Scans would reveal the screw in her left leg bone had broke off and ruptured into her femur, the strongest bone in the body, essentially disabling her. But the surgeon told her not to worry and to carry on with the healing process of her right leg, and later they'd make arrangements for the left leg to catch up with the growth. This obviously scared Elaine as it meant her legs would now be of unequal lengths. On top of that, the surgeon said she'd have to pay thousands of extra pounds for the corrective surgery, which she agreed to if it meant she could get back to her desired result. After a few months, her right leg had reached her target 7 centimeters longer, but the issue with her left leg meant her spine was now curved from the imbalance and was causing her daily pain. 6 weeks later, scans of her right leg showed an alarming lack of bone growth. Her femur was essentially two bits of bone held together by the metal rod. So Dr. Goucher agreed to start the bone growth in her left leg after the screw breaking for even more money. But this also resulted in the screw breaking again, and 3 days later, Elaine was in so much pain she couldn't move. But at this point, the relationship had soured between the two, the doctor and the patient, and she felt so uncomfortable that she decided to go back to London, even in the condition she was, and to seek help from the UK's NHS, like public health, instead. This process, though, would take 5 years, where she essentially hid from the world and almost bankrupt herself, depleting all her savings and being rendered unemployed, of course, due to basically being homeridden. Eventually, she sued her surgeon to recover huge amounts of lost money,
In the
but he
end,
still
Elaine
settled
won
without
£1
admitting
million
any
pounds from
wrongdoing.
the court case against her surgeon. But that took about 6 or 7 years to get to that point. And this whole time, she hasn't been working. She's been stuck inside and she's been going through surgery after surgery on the NHS. She gave up her career for this essentially. She was flying high in the wealth management career. She was getting jobs in Singapore, London, New York. She was really at the peak of her life, you could say. And then this just completely shattered everything for her. So I don't know if £1 million is really going to make up much, especially considering she was probably making that per year or per 2 years in that kind of position she was in the kinds of banks she was working for. And just to think that she's gone from that to spending the last 5+ years inside trying to be able to work again and now correcting spinal issues she has, trying to get her legs back together. Yeah, it's just horrifying to think, really. And like I said, it's not to say that all these surgeries go badly because we have seen some cases of this surgery doing really well for people and being super successful. I'm going to put a case up on the screen now of a man in the US who's gone pretty famous for this surgery and he's already back in the gym working out. So I'm not on here saying, oh, this surgery is horrible, like, look what it can do to you. But I think it is sad that the pursuit of height, and again, this is another type of beauty pressure that we have from society, is allowing kind of this surgery to pop up as a popular cosmetic surgery, and that people feel the need or feel like they kind of have to for their mental health to put them through something so invasive. So I think that it's just it's just something to be aware of, that this is how much pressure that the appeal to look beautiful or be taken seriously by your height is putting people under.